This tutorial will show you standard operations and options. This app is called the House DNA Robot, or House DR for short, version 7.26. This is the main appointment page or map. It has an upper part and a lower part. The upper part is the appointment book. The lower part allows you to arrange an appointment. Pick a date from the calendar. Select times from the timetable. Select a color to distinguish the patient in the patient appointment book by blocks of time. Enter the patient's date and time period in the patient appointment card or PAC area. You will notice that these times have been removed from the timetable to prevent overbooking or double booking. In here we'll put the reason for the patient's appointment. Let's say the patient's coming in for an injection. To transfer this, we click Save, and the appointment change is made. We see on the upper half of the map screen, in the appointment book, the name of the patient, their unique chart ID number, the reason for their visit, status or discussion, the name of the provider, and the patient's contact information, email and phone number. Now this is the screen that the doctors, clinical staff, and treating professionals will be using. The lower part is for administration and business people. The other screen is called the template, the routing template. To access the routing template, just click on the patient's name. Select the services performed either from the CPT data bank, by categories, or by using the predictive text box. Let's say the patient is coming in for initial office visit. In this case, IOV represents the code 99204. You can make up any 3-letter codes or 2-letter codes or more to be representative of a CPT code number and CPT code description. In this case, the provider uses the in-house letters IOV to mean initial office visit and be representative of the CPT code 99204. Other in-house codes can be used to represent other services, including other levels of visits. For example, 99203 is representative by adding the letter S on the in-house code to represent a simple or initial office visit of a lesser level, 99203. Let's select that. Likewise, other procedures are entered in. Instead of remembering the code for injection, we may wish to use INJ to represent injection. In this case, INJ, without being any more specific than this, INJ IN represents injection intermediate, or 20605. INJP is representative of 64450. Again, any letters can be used to be representative of any codes. It's a matter of what each provider can remember and likes to use for their in-house codes and descriptions. BK can represent below the knee cast and is representative of the CPT code 29405. Of course, we can always use the code numbers. Here, the predictive text will show you that the 8 brings up intraoperative tissue culture, but as we enter in additional numbers, it becomes more specific. This data is entered into the CPT DX field down here. Now that we've entered in the services and procedures, evaluation and management codes, now we need to select diagnosis codes to correspond. We can either use the predictive box in a similar way by typing in the diagnosis, or we could use the ICD Data Bank button. Double click. It appears here, and we select where we want it to go. Since this has already been chosen, we'll see what happens when we try to add it again. So let's find another one. Let's use this one down here. It doesn't mean anything, it's just arbitrary. Likewise, we're not going to really match up the CPT and diagnosis codes at this time. We'll save that for another tutorial. But it's important to match up the correct ICD with the correct CPT. Now we've completed the CPT and a list of diagnosis codes that correspond to them. To delete or change any of these lines, we use these functions here. This button complete clears out the bottom section in the CPT DX field. Return to Office. If we're going to schedule a surgery, we can say what that surgery is going to be in the discussion or status. Hammer toe surgery. Now, this is today's visit, and we will preview this data that we've entered in. You see that the diagnoses that we put in have been placed for now into the permanent diagnosis field. Once they are sent to post, they will remain there. Here's the initial office visit with the corresponding diagnoses in the specific order as listed. The return to office date, the surgery date, and the status or discussion for why the patient is returning. The time and date that the routing template was generated, and everything looks fine. So let's close this and return back to the routing template. Again, we don't see those diagnoses going up here in the permanent diagnosis field until we populate the external program and the patient returns on the next visit. Then these diagnoses will appear up here. Okay, let's send this to post. Now if we return back to that same patient by clicking on the patient's name and pulling up the routing template, you'll see that the fields are cleared, and now those diagnoses that we added here display up in the permanent diagnosis field. It's now ready for another data service and procedures. This concludes the general description of how to make an appointment and pull up a routing template page.